The outbreak of COVID-19 induced a collapse in national GDP growth rates. Governments face exceptionally high levels of debt. The challenge of climate change persists. All this calls for innovative financing tools, from capital markets to the green recovery. Find out more about the most efficient tools of the finance sector in the session to come.
Welcome back to the Weltsaal, ladies and gentlemen. As the first wave of the pandemic was breaking over the world, one often heard reference to the famous injunction by Winston Churchill, never waste a good crisis. And certainly the pandemic has sparked a crisis on multiple levels. COVID-19 is not only a health and humanitarian crisis, of course, but also an economic one, with many countries facing serious recession and unprecedented levels of debt. And yet at the same time, an opportunity has emerged, as our film just pointed out, to build back better, using recovery programs to green our post-pandemic economies will, however, require unlocking billions, not only in public, but also in private sector spending. And how we leverage that capital is the topic of this panel on financing the green recovery. And of course, we've heard mention of that topic several times in our sessions so far. We want to explore innovative financial tools. We want to ask whether capital markets are correctly identifying and pricing ESG instruments. And we want to explore who needs to do what to foster green investment strategies. We've got an outstanding panel, but before I introduce them, I just want to ask you to please weigh in on our audience poll. You already see it up on your screens, I think. We're asking the question, financing the green recovery should primarily be the role of, and we have the choice, governments or capital markets, and far and away the most of you, but the majority of you see this apparently as a public sector responsibility. We do have a few more votes coming in now for capital markets. I am going to introduce our speakers with short intros, as usual, to make the most of our time later on, and then we'll come back and take one more look at how that poll turned out. And dear speakers, by the way, I'm also going to ask that you try to give us answers as concise as possible, meaning 2 to 3 minutes maximum per statement, because again, I'm very, very eager to make the most of our interaction and hopefully also to bring in audience questions. And dear audience, you can pose those using the chat function. If you are a registered user, you'll see that chat function on this live stream window. So now it is my pleasure to introduce our speakers. I think we're missing one, but I'm just going to go ahead and read off all of the names and titles right now, and hopefully we'll have all of you with us shortly. It's a pleasure to welcome Eng Halazawati. She is Minister of Energy and Mineral Resources from Jordan. Great to have you with us. Arifin Tasrif is Minister of Energy and Mineral Resources for Indonesia. Welcome. Dr. Elnur Sultanov is Deputy Minister of Energy for Azerbaijan. Great to have you with us as well. Adam Grigorje Chetvertinsky is not with us yet. We're hoping he will be joining us shortly. He's the Undersecretary of State for the Ministry of Climate and Environment in Poland. And finally, very good to have with us Walburga Hemmetsberger. She's the Chief Executive Officer of Solar Power Europe, with extensive experience working with the financial sector. So let's take a really quick look once again at those results of that audience poll, just to see how the balance came out between the public sector and capital markets. And look at that, it evened out considerably. 45% of you saying capital markets should play a primary role in financing the green recovery. 55% thinks governments need to be the leaders on that. So let me now move straight away into a discussion with our panel, and I'd like to ask each of you to talk about what your country or your organization is doing to leverage financing for the green transition. So to the political leaders on the panel, and then I'll come a bit later to Madam Hemmetsberger, to the political leaders, what are the most efficient mechanisms for greener investment strategies? There's a whole panoply of tools out there: green bonds, public-private partnerships, support for R&D, or something else. Please tell us how you see it, and I'll start with Jordan. Minister from Jordan, please.
Good day to everybody. I hope that you and your families are doing well, especially in this COVID pandemic, which caused a shock for all of us, individuals, companies, and countries. Let me go directly to answer the question, but just to give you an idea, what have we done in the previous 5 years, which led us to go from nearly null or very little renewable energy to around 20% by 2020. And this is a success story, and it has been told as a success story for a green energy around. With regards to financing, we think that it is, of course, one of the main enablers. What we have done, first, for large-scale, utility-scale projects, many of the international financing institutions came to Jordan and funded so many projects, utility-scale projects. And this financing amounted around $3.9 billion that has been invested in renewable energy in Jordan during the past 5 years. And this was really successful, and this was happened mainly because also our regulations helped these financing institutions to come to Jordan and made that all happen. In addition, our Central Bank of Jordan played a big role by also giving loans to local banks, which facilitated giving loans to consumers who were keen to build renewable energy systems. And the interest rates, the duration of the loan was really backed by the Central Bank of Jordan, which led Jordan to achieve a lot during the past years. And that was led by business investment climate in Jordan. One more thing which I believe is a success story in Jordan, we call it the JREEF, which is the Jordan Renewable Energy and Energy Efficiency Fund, which targeted small consumers. So we spread awareness by funding, by helping small consumers go to energy efficiency, go to renewable energy. So we pitched in with a percentage of building these systems, which spread renewable energy, be it through generating electricity, solar water heaters, energy efficiency in schools, mosques, factories, households. All this we were able to do, and I hope this would be replicated in other countries. One last thing, the partnership between public and private sectors was very important for the progress we achieved during the past years, and hopefully we will continue to achieve in the coming years.
Minister Zawacki, let me just say a very quick hello to the Undersecretary of State from Poland, who has now joined us. Great to have you with us as well. We're talking at the moment in our first round of questions and answers about what each country or organization is doing to leverage financing for the energy transition. But I'll come back to you shortly. I'm going to go first of all to the Minister from Indonesia, Mr. Tasrif, to answer the same question. So what you're doing to leverage finance and what you consider to be the most important instruments available for you as a political leader.
Well, thank you. Our government, our finance ministry, we have issued already the Green Islamic Funds, Green Islamic Bond. We call it Sukuk in February 18 and put Indonesia on the map by becoming the first ASEAN country to do so. The bond raised to 1.25 billion and then was used to fund several environmentally friendly projects. The ministry issued also another one in February 2019, worth around $2 billion in the local green bond market, state-owned infrastructure financing company, PT SMI, became the first issuer of a corporate green bond in Indonesia, which was issued in July 9, 2018. The company was committed to utilizing 100% of the proceeds for green projects such as LRT project, mini hydropower plants, and then also in the next coming years, the financing from SMI itself can be used to support the development of our renewable energy, such as geothermal power plant. In Indonesia itself, we have several programs that we do, such as we define the primary final energy substitution, utilizing existing technology. For instance, we use B30 biofuel for firing, and then for the revised RDF project, we also converting fossil primary energy conversion. We convert diesel power plant or coal power plant into renewable energy, biogas or pellet for cooking. Also, we increase renewable energy capacity to meet the new demand, focusing on the development of solar power plant and utilization of non-electric new renewable energy, non-biofuel, acceleration of battery electric vehicle program for road transportation, and also energy efficiency program. Of course, those kind of programs need a support, need a financial support. So we have to simplify our regulation here, easy licensing, and then providing several incentives such as tax allowance and tax holiday. So we are welcoming foreign investor to come to our country. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And we'll go straight on to the Deputy Minister of Energy from Azerbaijan, Dr. Sultanov. Please.
Thank you very much, Ms. Chairperson, the distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen. The new debate in Azerbaijan is the newly signed decree by the President of Azerbaijan, His Excellency, Mr. Ilham Aliyev, which sets national priorities for the country, and one of those national priorities is to turn Azerbaijan into a clean environment and a green growth economy. And we are very excited about that. Another set goal by the President of Azerbaijan is to have to achieve 30% in the installed capacity in the power production in the country by renewable energy. And we are working very hard in that direction as well. And Azerbaijan is also on its way to reduce its greenhouse gas emissions by 35% by 2030, and we are pretty sure that we are going to achieve that goal too. In December 2020, the agreements on wind power plant project with a capacity of 240 megawatt have been signed between the government of Azerbaijan and ACWA Power of Saudi Arabia. In the meantime, the implementation agreement has been signed with Masdar to develop and finance 230 megawatt solar photovoltaic project, and we are looking forward to sign investment agreements in coming months. Thus, around $500 million worth of FDI will be channeled to the renewable energy sector in Azerbaijan through these projects in the coming years. There is also ongoing cooperation with BP, the largest investor in Azerbaijan's oil and gas sector, in the integrated and decarbonized energy and mobility systems. A pilot project to install floating solar panels is also being implemented with the support of the Asian Development Bank. In general, the country's renewable energy potential is high, and currently holding auctions to attract investors to renewable energy projects is another area of focus. At the same time, a legislative and regulatory framework is being established to develop the renewable energy sector and increase energy efficiency in the country. All these steps are aiming to establish transparent and predictable market rules for investors, domestic and foreign alike, in order to attract more private financing to the sector. Recent liberation of long-time occupied territories of Azerbaijan opened new opportunities for sustainable peace and development in the region. Transformation of the liberated territories into a green energy zone has been identified as one of the main goals by President Ilham Aliyev. The participation of foreign investors in the development of Karabakh's green and smart cities and villages with cutting-edge technologies promises beneficial prospects for everyone. In short, we understand that due to COVID challenge, we are going through tough economic times, which does not help with the plans regarding green growth. But as the example of Azerbaijan shows, hard work, close, intensive, transparent, and endless dialogue and cooperation with domestic stakeholders and potential investors, foreign and domestic alike, seem to produce desirable outcomes. And this is really what we see as the main factor, the main approach for the challenges that we are facing, and the outcomes we are acquiring are quite commendable. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And before I go to Poland's Undersecretary of State, just a really quick word to you, dear ladies and gentlemen in the audience. If you're a registered user, please do send us your questions. I'm eager to try to get them into the panel as well, so you can use the chat function to do that. And now it's my pleasure to go to Adam Grigorje-Chetvertinsky, hope I more or less pronounced that correctly, sir, for a very quick response, if you would, on what Poland is doing, both to leverage financing for the green energy transition and also on what instruments you view as most crucial and effective to that purpose.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, and thank you for the invitation. And I'm very sorry for Mr. Kotyka, who could not be with us today because of being requested by the Prime Minister on another meeting. But I'm happy to present you a few perspectives from our side. And I must say that the transformation of the Polish energy system will be even more challenging than pronouncing my name. You can, but we are sure that with the energy policy that we have adopted earlier this year in the government, that sets a clear path towards reduction of emission intensity in the energy sector in particular, and the transformation of our energy mix, that we have, as I said, a clear path towards achieving our goals as Poland, as the EU, and as the international community, also under the Paris Agreement. And if we want to deliver on the Green Deal in the EU, to achieve at the EU level climate neutrality, we really need to have very concrete actions and investments identified. We cannot really talk about increasing our reduction targets without proposing an action plan for the implementation of that target and financial support that will allow each member states to transform. Because if we don't do so, the targets will only remain on paper. And what we want is to actually be able to achieve those targets. We see these reforms as well as an opportunity to create an impulse for the development of our economies, and we need to use it this way. But we also have to mitigate the risks associated with the transformation and the specific challenges that each country face. And in our case, but it's not challenges that are uncommon, and there are also existing in other countries. We see huge challenges with the risk of rising energy poverty, connected to increased energy costs with the transformation, and also job losses, in particular in the regions most relying today on fossil fuel extraction. And this is why these mechanisms that would be key in preventing less wealthy countries from incurring disproportionate costs related to climate transformation are key. If we want to be successful in achieving our increased ambitions and target, we also must gain social acceptance for our decisions and avoid any possible negative impacts of the policies we are implementing. Especially in these times of crisis, we should make sure that the policies we implement will not create an additional burden, in particular on the poorest of our citizens, but instead will offer new opportunities for growth and employment for the benefit of all of our citizens. If we want to achieve the goals of the Green Deal, we must first ensure that the production of cheap and clean energy, we must ensure that we can reduce our dependence on fossil fuels and develop further renewable energy. We want businesses and homes to switch away from fossil fuel-based energy sources, and people to make different choices about what they buy and how they live. Increasing outlays for the green economy and costly investments can also only be carried out in a stable regulatory environment, and therefore we develop strategies and set clear timelines for the transformation of the energy system, taking into account the specificities of our country. And we have developed at national level a wide array of programs such as My Electricity, My Water, on the green public transport, clean air, which provide financial and technical support for individuals, local governments, and companies in the implementation of the transformation goals. And we've seen, for instance, with this program I mentioned, My Electricity, with a budget of about 250 million euros that has been supporting the installation of micro installations of photovoltaic panels in households. A gigantic success of the program with today approximately 400,000 prosumers, about 4 gigawatt of installed capacity, and we expect that by 2030, thanks to the support scheme and falling cost, there will be even 1 million prosumers. And we are working as well on appropriate transformation plans for the regions most affected by the transformation, today relying on fossil fuel extraction for a big part of their economy, to develop in those regions new sectors, new activities connected with the transformation. And soon we will be ready. We are currently in the phase of public consultations with public hearings planned later this month on the National Recovery Plan to use the resources mobilized at EU level in the frame of the Next Generation EU program, of which 37% will be used for climate-related expenditures. And we want to allocate these resources to further support innovation, green energy, and measures to protect the climate and clean air. And these measures will largely support, therefore, investments in energy efficiency, in renewable energy sources, and in zero-emission public transportation. So this is, in a nutshell, the main direction of our plans, but happy to take part in a discussion and answer a few questions.
Thank you very much for that, Under Secretary of State. And let us now move to a private sector voice, to the CEO of Solar Power Europe. And if you like, perhaps a double question. Let's start with what your organization is doing to leverage finance funding for the green energy transition. And then after that, I have a question or two about market pricing of green and sustainable instruments. But let's start with Solar Power Europe and what you're doing.
Thanks very much, and thanks for the introduction, and thanks for inviting me. Maybe I should start first with telling you who Solar Power Europe is. So we're the European Association representing the whole value chain of solar PV in Europe and beyond. We have more than 230 members. Let me start by saying, and that's a very positive message I can bring, is that solar has shown a great resilience during that crisis. Solar market has not only grown a little bit, but it has grown with double digits by 11%, and we added 18% of 18 gigawatt of solar in Europe. And the global picture looks very similar. At the same time, without the crisis, it could have been more and it should have been more. And we now have the opportunity really to turn this crisis into sustainable growth. And I couldn't agree more with you, Under Secretary of State Guy Bourget-Czetwertyński, that creating jobs and providing for social acceptance is really very important. Governments can do a lot when it comes to the recovery. Recovery plans are important. In Europe, we are happy that the Recovery and Resilience Facility will disperse 672 billion in grants and loans that should go into green investments. And there's a big opportunity here to invest in the lowest cost energy source, which is solar, boost utility scale solar, roll out solar rooftop storage programs, and in general, promote electrification. But I acknowledge, and now I'm coming to your question, that governments are also strained what they can do. So what governments can do in any way and how they can help private investments in private investments to go green is, first of all, to provide a stable regulatory framework which is decreasing the costs of finance, and also accelerate permitting procedures for renewable projects. And as Solar Power Europe, we're very much working on helping to provide the right framework conditions so that it is possible to have these projects developed and provide for financing. In this respect, we are also engaging very much in the discussion about the definition of sustainable finance. I do think this is a very important point. So we want to make sure that we will have a meaningful label in Europe which is guiding investors to finance real green investments. But we also help to identify financial mechanisms which can help to boost green finance. So policymakers will not be able to do it alone when it comes to the framework. And there's a joint role of markets and policymakers, as your poll also has shown in the very beginning. So there are, in particular, three opportunities I would like to highlight here when it comes to finance. Sustainable and green bonds, they have been mentioned by some of my predecessors as speakers. They can effectively scale up sustainable infrastructure. Commercial financial institutions are increasingly making commitments towards the sustainability goals. A second opportunity is guarantee mechanisms. Projects must be bankable. Guarantees are very helpful to attract appropriate funding. For example, what we see in Europe is that the Spanish government has recently announced financial support schemes for corporates seeking power purchase agreements that will include credit risk guarantees to help drive these investments. Similar in Norway, where there's also for energy-intensive companies and the buyer consortiums, public guarantee scheme, which are supported by the Norwegian Export Credit Guarantee Agency. And last but not least, in emerging markets, what we see is really helpful is blended finance, a key enabler of accelerating capital flows towards renewable energy.
Thank you very much. Then just one quick follow-up question from me, and it does go to the point that you spoke to briefly, essentially regarding green and sustainable instruments and their reliability. How can we overcome what appear to be pricing inaccuracies or distortions on the capital markets? One of the leading members of the board of the European Central Bank spoke to this last year, saying that they see real market failure in terms of pricing some of these instruments. What needs to happen to change that?
So I do think that financial markets are key to accelerate the energy transition towards a low-carbon economy. So after the pandemic, we have seen increase in bond issuance, but we do think that this steady increase in recent years is still very little when it comes to the great universe of green bonds which are out there. So they're vanishing small still. So in spite of the exponential surge in investor demand for green assets over the past years, so we do think that there's an unparalleled opportunity to boost the green financial markets and help reduce the costs of transitioning towards a low-carbon economy. Having said that, we do think that ESG investing strategy can offer higher returns as well. And it is really a misconception we see out there that you have to be willing to give up returns in order to invest responsibly.
Thank you very much. So let me now go back to our political leaders on the panel. We've just heard Madam Hemmetsberger talking about the importance of cooperation between the public and private sector, and clearly our audience poll, I think the Undersecretary of State from Poland may have missed it, but we did an audience poll asking who essentially needs to be the main driver on financing the green energy transition, and it came out 55% public sector, 45% private sector. So a clear perception also amongst those following us in the audience that this has to be a joint endeavor. Therefore, I'd like to ask all of the policy leaders to say a little bit about how you are cooperating with the private sector, what you're doing to leverage private investment, and where you face challenges. And I'll go down the panel in the exact same order, so starting with the Minister from Jordan.
With regards to the cooperation between public and private sector, and I believe without that cooperation, we wouldn't have reached where we reached today. Just as a figure, so we're saying 20% of our electricity today is coming from renewables, and that is around 2,063 megawatts today of installed capacity. And this is huge for Jordan, for Jordan's electric system. This wouldn't have happened if it wasn't for the cooperation between public and private sector. And mainly, there were so many PPAs signed with the private sector. Up to today, we have around 31 power purchase agreements that were signed. And if it wasn't for the international financing institutions behind these private companies and the financing they've got, we wouldn't be where we are today. And that was actually private-public cooperation, because the public is from the government side, but there was also the private companies who were working on renewable energy, and the international financing institutions. In addition, I would add that we had a great role at the beginning, because today it's like our 6th year after we started incorporating renewable energy in our system. It started in 2014, and look at the jump from 2014 nearly 1% of renewable energy used to feed our system, and today it's 20%. So it's a huge jump. So what we did, the Central Bank of Jordan helped private sector and consumers through the local banks to get some loans that were easy, 10 years tenor, 1% interest rate to the banks, and so on. This all also helped in the penetration of renewable energy in Jordan. And by the way, the business climate in Jordan for renewable energy investments is considered to be the best in the MENA region. We ranked among the top 3 on Bloomberg's climate scope, and this is really important for us. And if we consider that financing is one key pillar for the advancement of renewable energy, then we must have been doing something right in that regard.
Thank you very much, Minister. And I do, in fact, have an audience question essentially underlining the same question. The question is this: how would you stimulate private citizens' investments to stimulate the transition without putting a burden on public budgets? Let me go now to Minister Tazrif. And dear speakers, let me just say we have very little time left on the clock, so short answers are welcome.
Thank you. Indonesia, we've been used our source of clean energy such as geothermal. But geothermal, as you maybe know, that the cost to produce electricity from geothermal is quite costly due to the risk of the fail of the exploration and the infrastructures, something like that. So what we do right now, we're preparing such kind of tariff for each kind of renewable that we can generate in our country. So recently, our energy mix of renewable is about 10% from our 62 gigawatt capacity of power plant, and we intend to increase in 2025. To be 23% of energy mix. So, in order to support that, we also provide not such kind of instruments, such as like Sustainable Development Goal of Indonesia 1, which combines public and private funds through blended finance schemes to channel into infrastructure projects related to achievement of the SDGs. SDG Indonesia 1 includes 4 types of pillars that are tailored to appetite of donors and investors, namely development facilities, de-risking facilities, financing facilities, and equity fund. The platform aims to raise funding from investors, donors, and philanthropists. The other one is green fiscal stimulus to bridge the national economic recovery towards economic transformation through green economy. Recently, for the transition, our government program is to convert our diesel fuel power generation, which is installed in the outer and remote island. Maybe you already know that we have 16,000 islands along the countries, where 6,000 of it is the inhabitants. There are 5,200 diesel power generation spread it in the 2,300 locations all over the remote areas. So what we do now, we are identifying what kind of renewable resource which is available over there that we can utilize in the future, and then let the people running that and the government guarantee the purchase of the electricity. Mm-hmm. So in this case, we are expecting the growth of those areas due to the electricity, due to the availability of electricity, then the activity of the economy. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And we'll move on now to Deputy Minister Sultanov from Azerbaijan. Key ways that you're cooperating with the private sector and what you see as the most important opportunities there.
Thank you, Dr. Crane, for the great question. I think, as I was trying to set my speech around, we are again looking forward to bringing about $500 million USD in coming 4 to 5 years to Azerbaijan to renewable energy sector, to one wind power, more than 200 megawatts, and one solar power station. And I think the most important thing there was, as you implied, states are really good at things that states are good at, and the firms and private sector is really good at the things that they are good at. So states govern well, and the private sector knows market very well. They know how to invest. They know the value of their dollars. They know how to maximize their returns. And states are really should be dealing with regulatory framework, and the private investors should be left with things that are related to the market. I think this is what happened in Azerbaijan. I believe that we were very clear about, and I think it's also important, perhaps a third element also related to the state's role, that there should be a clear vision and strategic goal, which was set by the president of the country in our case. And then it was very clear what our the Minister of Energy's mandate was. And with that mandate, we tried to create the most transparent environment and an environment for endless dialogue. And that kind of gave and created an environment for trust, for bonding, for transparency, where everybody was involved. And it's not just about investors from the country or abroad. It's also about domestic stakeholders, which is a great deal of factor when you have to settle all the differences and come to a conclusion. So I think, and again, we are looking forward. The final investment decision haven't been made yet, but we are looking forward to that. We are almost sure that it will be a success story very soon. And again, it was about states setting strategic goal and creating an environment, regulatory environment, and also guarantees. Like in terms of investment, it's the private sector that brings in the FDI, but the government, of course, guarantees the purchase and guarantees any fluctuations in terms of the national currency and all the issues. Regulation guarantees strategic vision by the state, and calculation, bankability issues vis-a-vis private sector, I think, is set to produce great outcomes. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I do have another audience question that's come in, so I'm going to ask both Undersecretary of State Grzegorz Czetwertyński and also CEO of Solar Power Europe, Madam Hemetsberger, to comment briefly on this, if you would. The question is this, or first a comment, then a question. Blended finance tools are important to steer private capital into high-risk markets, but they're not a catch-all solution, says our questioner. And then the question, especially SMEs, don't they need guidance to access new tools? So perhaps first of all to you, Undersecretary of State, what are you doing to help small and medium-sized enterprises also in succeeding in the energy transition? Because of course, so much of what we're talking about does rest on their shoulders. The energy transition is often all about decentralized, smaller private sector actors. So what can you do to support them?
Well, first of all, I must say I quite agree with the comment in general that the instruments that we have to use as states to help the economy to develop the technologies, the solutions we need to reach our climate targets are very different depending on the size of the investments, depending on the problems we are facing, and different types of instruments may be used. Regarding the support to SMEs, one of the things that we have started doing in Poland is in particular supporting innovation in SMEs to help all these companies, for instance, connected with the traditional industrial activities, traditional fossil fuel extraction, transform their activities, develop new products that would be answering to the needs of other sectors Very often, these companies have a very strong technical competences, very strong industrial asset base, and need help to develop new products, new solutions that are useful on the path to climate neutrality, and that will respond to growing investment needs that we will face as a society. And this is one, for instance, one of the ways that we can support these investments. But another significant instrument that we use also to maximize the effect of the public resources engaged in this effort is de-risking. It was already mentioned before, and it can be done in a number of ways. But for instance, this is what we did with our recent law on offshore wind investments, offering a contract for difference for investors to reduce significantly the risk and make it easier for them to finance the investments on the regular banking market, and to find and to mobilize therefore private resources to face the investment cost by just offering this additional say safety net from the side of the state to minimize the risks incurred by the investors.
Thank you very much, Undersecretary of State. And Walburga Hemmetsberger, we're just about out of time, but if you could speak to the point about SMEs, the question that was posed there by a member of the audience, I'd be very grateful to you, but briefly, if you would. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I couldn't agree more that de-risking is one of the key elements we would have to look at. As I already said in my introductory remarks, credit risk guarantees help to drive investments, because what we see today is that big corporates are investing in renewables, on-site renewables, in PPAs, but we're working today more on SMEs in order to also get them on board, and credit risk guarantees play a major role, but it's also about really making it easier for not just SMEs, but for citizens in general to invest. And that relates very much also to permits granting. That is a topic where governments would have to speed up permitting in order to help citizens and SMEs to invest in renewable projects. Try to be very short.
Thank you very much for doing so. That brings us in just about on time. Dear speakers, many, many thanks to you for this very interesting, thought-provoking discussion on how we leverage those billions in public and private investment that will be needed if we want to succeed with the green energy transition and decarbonize our economies by 2050. So many thanks to all of you. We go back now to the hub, ladies and gentlemen, to find out what's going on over there. And after that, dear ladies and gentlemen, you have a crucial choice to make, because we will in fact have parallel sessions. So Jennifer is going to tell us a little bit more, both about what's happening right now in the hub and how you get to the Europasaal if you choose to attend that parallel session. Over to you, Jennifer.